Thank you guys for being here on a Monday morning. Before you guys fire away with questions, just wanted to say a few things. I watched a lot of playoff baseball this weekend with my sons, and I was really struck by two things. The first thing I was struck by was just how much I miss it, and just how much it hurts not to be there. Everything we do in these jobs is to play deep into October, to give the fans that thrill of October baseball. And I don't like the feeling of being a spectator and watching on my couch. And just sort of reconfirms all those things that we work for. And I can't wait to get back there. And the second thing that really struck me was some really good teams that had really special seasons were done 3-4 days after the regular season ended. And, that's baseball. Those teams didn't lack heart. They weren't poorly built. Ultimately, we're a sport that you play 162 games for a reason, and then all of a sudden these series get short, and random things happen. And there's a reason you have to go back year after year after year. When we were building this up the first time, we talked a lot about sustained success. And we talked about that for a reason. And I do believe we accomplished a lot of that. We made the playoffs 5 out of 6 years. 3 times we had those late October runs we're talking about. We won a World Series. I think we fell short at the end of that, though. We couldn't sustain it as long as we wanted to. And so as we think about, the special culture and the special organization we're trying to build right now, it's like, how do we take the lessons that we learned from what we did right the first time but extend it? How do we build something stable and lasting for the fans so that we are playing in October? And like I said, we're not watching on TV, because that's the goal. The first half of the season obviously was not up to our standards. We made a lot of trades in 2021. We had a lot of holes to fill. We were inexperienced. We lacked depth. And we played poorly. There's no way around that. It was frustrating for all of us. I was incredibly impressed, excited by the way we played in the second half. I thought we created some real momentum. Some of those inexperienced players started to gain experience. Some of the depth that we've been working to create for several years started to bear fruit. And there's a real sense of momentum in this building right now because of the way we played in the second half. We're 8 games over. We pitched exceptionally well. And, I really give a lot of credit to the players. They never stop competing every day. Even, those last 6 games against Cincinnati, every game in the clubhouse, they were looking to prepare to win a game, to compete every night. And that's incredibly impressive. And I also give a ton of credit to the coaching staff, led by David Ross, preparing those guys every single day, continuing to focus on the right things, because I think what we saw at the end, that momentum, I think has a chance to really continue to lead into the off season and to create a lot of confidence in a very young group. So I couldn't be more excited about the way we finished. It's a far cry from the way we started. And ultimately, we have to build on that momentum. That's going to be the focus of this off season. We absolutely want to compete next year. We also want to build something really special for the fans. We want to build something stable, something lasting, and that's the lens that we're going to view our transactions this winter. We want to make sure that what we build creates what we talked about before, which is year after year after year being in the playoffs and giving these fans what they deserve, which is October baseball. So with that, I will let you guys ask any questions, but we're very excited about where we're going. We have some real momentum in this building, and we look forward to building something really special. So go ahead, Bruce.
Jed, you having mentioned that some of these underdogs have taken over in the playoffs right away, does that change your thought process going forward as to that you can have a rebuild right now and still piece it together year by year to make the playoffs as you're building the organization to where you want it to go?
Yeah. Well, I think the focus has to be on building a team that you feel like can play deep into October. That, starting pitching, relief pitching, offense, defense is a complete team, and there are definitely some very complete teams in this postseason field, and there's probably some teams that have a few holes. Now, when the series gets shortened, certainly you don't have to have a perfect team to win in the postseason. I think we've seen that year after year, but our goal has to be higher. Our goal has to be to create one of those teams that you feel like has the best chance in October. Now, what happens? I think I've been part of teams that got a couple good breaks in October and won some series that might have been underdogs, and I've also been part of some teams that were favorites going in that were gone really quickly, and that's the nature of it. But the goal has to be to create something really special that doesn't have those holes that can be exploited.
Jed, kind of off of that, what will a successful offseason look like to you?
I think, as I mentioned, I think trying to make sure that we view our transactions through the right lens, right? I think last season we talked a lot about intelligent spending, and I think we'll certainly look to do that again. I want to build on the momentum that we created at the end of the year, but I know that we have some holes to fill, and we'll be aggressive to try to fill those holes in the best way possible. I think we can definitely compete next year, and we also want to create something lasting and special. And so we're always going to have to keep those two things in mind. But I do believe that a successful offseason does involve filling those holes that we know we saw. I thought the end of the season, our pitching, run prevention really stepped forward, and that was really gratifying to see. You never have enough. I think we've talked about it year after year. We never have enough. Offensively, despite the fact that we played really well, we also didn't score enough. We didn't, at times we were kind of banged up, but that exposed a lack of depth. So I think that's going to be a clear area of focus is, making sure that our run scoring kind of takes a step forward, because this year towards the end, even as we were playing well, we were lagging behind a bit.
Tim, that's the hottest court. Okay. You mentioned the fans a couple of times here. I know what the fans want may not dictate your decisions, but what they maybe deserve, a team that's not out of it by May. How important of a factor is that to really have a team that, put together a team and spend aggressively to put a team out there that's competing still by midsummer?
Yeah. Well, I do think that, sort of the journey is a big part of it. Building up a group of young players, bringing them along. You can't win in today's game without having that stable of young players. So it is a process for sure, and I think we've made real progress on that note. There's no question the first half of this year, we took hope off the table quickly with the way we played early on. We didn't fill some of those holes effectively, and that was a challenge. I think that's a fair thing to say. We want to make sure that we play more like we played in the second half in the first half of next season. We want to compete, but again, we also have an eye on building something special, on creating something lasting, and I think that ultimately is the biggest focus, because that stability is what brings you playoff runs year after year after year, and so we're not going to do anything that we feel like doesn't make sense for both the short term and the long term.
I mean, it sounds like this is in a lot of ways what you talked about kind of when you took over. You're keeping one eye on the future, one eye on the present. But you talked a lot in your opening statement about the way the team played in the second half and all the feeling of optimism and momentum in the building and going forward, building on that. How big of an off season is this to make sure you get it right, crossroads otherwise, in the larger picture of the process, given where you're at right now after that second half and what you want to build off of? And kind of part of that would be, are you any closer to having a sense of a timeline of when you might have enough pieces together that you start thinking about that deep October run? Because I know you guys project markets years out.
I'm trying to unpack all of that. That was longer than my opening statement. Yeah, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to execute well every offseason. I know we did last offseason. I think on the some of the bigger items, I feel really good about where Stroman and Seiya. Candidly, I think we had a lot of holes to fill, and I think we probably missed on some of the other transactions, and that set us back a little bit in the first half. But every offseason is really important to that end. I do think we want to capture that momentum, as I mentioned. I think that's really important. And yeah, we do project well out in the future. One thing that we know is that we know who's going to be a free agent or who has the potential to be a free agent in out years. That a new group of players isn't going to come on board. So you can always project that out, and that's a big part of our job, thinking about what those markets look like, what players could be available, how do they fit into what we're trying to do. I don't see we have to keep one eye on the future as we think through this. We want to build something lasting, and we want to build something that we're proud of for a long time. And I think that you can get caught up in our game in transactions that feel really good in the short term and don't make long term sense. So those are the ones we'll avoid. But we do want to be aggressive to capture that momentum, to fill the holes on the team that we know we have. And of course, I think as a staff, we put a lot of pressure on having a really successful offseason.
But is it fair to call this any sort of crossroads offseason, given where you guys are now? You got rid of some assets, you're building out for something?
I wouldn't label it anything other than it's a really important offseason to continue to build towards our goal.
Jed, you talk about the optimism in the second half. Kind of how much is a direct result of the developments in the pitching group and all the young guys that came up and had success at the big league level? And then what's kind of the plan to maybe augment that this offseason by adding some veteran pitchers or however else you see fit to the group?
Yeah, I think that pitching development is something that we take great pride in, and it's also something I would note that you go back to 2019. We brought in Craig Breslow that year. He and Kyle Evans spent really the whole year looking at our pitching infrastructure and how we were doing things, and we really made a commitment to make real changes in that area. And we named Craig the director of pitching in the fall of 2019, and started this process. And unfortunately, I think we kind of got delayed by a year, like everyone did. As we were trying to make those changes, COVID hit, and that was a strange year that way. But I think when you look up, I think a lot of the things we saw in the second half of this year, a lot of the success we had in the minor leagues throughout the year those are seeds that were planted, several years before. And I think that's just the nature of our job, that a lot of times the things that we're watching right now are things that we've been planning for a bunch of years. And this is no different. So I think we're really proud of that pitching infrastructure. I also know enough to know that there's no finish line there, that you can never have enough, and we need to talk about augmenting it through external transactions. We need to talk about how we can continue to make the guys we have better, because it was a good feeling for a few months to watch those young guys come up and succeed, and the game planning, the execution of what we were trying to accomplish was really good. Now, we need to continue to improve that year after year and continue to build on that. But it is a real source of pride, and all the people in that pitching group deserve a lot of credit.
Hey, Jed, you talked about intelligent spending, and a lot of people have been pointing to the 4 free agent shortstops potentially on the market. Last year, Corey Seager signed for, I think, 10 years, $325 million. Rangers didn't come close to making the playoffs. What would be your definition of intelligent spending? Is it's easy to say like a successful business plan wouldn't include paying market price for some of these superstars, but on the other hand, you need some of those. So,
Yeah, I mean, to me, intelligent spending involves making decisions that make sense for, that, I guess now the 2023 season, but also aren't going to hinder what we're trying to build. And the nature of baseball contracts is challenging that way because we've all seen contracts of certain lengths that can really bog a team down, and it's easy to talk about the player you're acquiring, but if that contract ends up hindering the ultimate goal here, which is to build something special and sustainable and lasting, then it wasn't a good transaction. So that's sort of the lens I want to look at everything through. Is that we absolutely want to compete next year. We want to add players that can help us in 2023, but we also want to do it with a real eye on the future.
Jed, you've mentioned a couple times that you want to compete, but how exactly do you define that? Because I know that was the goal going into this season, but even if you hadn't maybe had the injury bad luck, probably still not a group that was competing for a division. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it is. We competed like crazy in the second half. We were eight games over 500, and I think that over the course of a full season, that was a 90-win pace the way we played at the end of the year. I think that we want to build a team that we feel like has a chance to compete for the playoffs. And like I said at the beginning, that is the goal. That's what we want to accomplish. We also know that kind of like where our minor league system is right now, that some of the prospects are younger. We won't churn out. We won't matriculate all those young players to the big leagues necessarily next year. So. We do have an eye on the future for sure, but we certainly want next season to look a lot more like our second half than our first half. And I think if it does, then we do have a chance to be in the race and play meaningful games throughout the entire season. And hopefully that means competing in October.
Hi, Jed. First of all, do you see all of David Ross's coaching staff returning for next year?
Well, we're still going through the process right now of having exit meetings, and we had a bunch of in Cincinnati. We had a few after that, and we actually still have a couple to go. So we have a process in place to go through that for the coaches and the staff, and so I'm not ready to announce that right now, but hopefully by the end of this week we'll be able to make that kind of announcement.
And then secondly, you talked a lot about how well they played in the second half. Is there any danger in how you evaluate that as you look forward, given you guys are out of the standings and given the Central has kind of some weak teams at the bottom? I mean, is there any danger in reading too much into that success at the end of the year?
Yeah, I think there is. I think that when you're not sort of in a pennant race, you can play sort of free and easy, and I think that matters. We played a really hard schedule in the first half, disproportionately so, and our schedule is a bit easier in the second half. We did play really well against the Phillies, who are moving on. I think we're 6-0 against them. We swept the Mets in New York, so we did have some really good moments against good teams. But I do think it's important to remember that. To look at to probably realize that that some of what we saw in the first half was probably somewhat schedule related and injury related, and some of in the second half we have to keep in mind that guys were able to kind of play free and easy at the end. So there is a danger in that, and we have to be mindful of that, of course.
Hi, Jed. Your strikeouts were down by about 1 a game from last year, but as you referred to earlier, a slug was down, so was homers. With free agency representing pretty much the Wild West, how much can you bank on power going up, just having guys like Seiya healthy for an entire year and guys just improving their power, guys like Nico maybe projecting to hit 15, 20 homers? Yeah,
I mean, it's certainly an area, as we talked about throughout the season, we have to be a little quicker strike offense than we were. I like the fact that we're making more contact. I did think there was times in the year we grinded our at bats, but we just had we lacked the ability to pull away in different games, and that's something we have to get better about. We played so many close games throughout the year because we couldn't stretch games out, and that really taxes the bullpen, and it leads to more randomness. You know, that the best teams in baseball blow people out, and one-run games are always going to center around 500. That's the baseball truism, you know, that, you know, one-run games are usually, you know, generally a 50-50 proposition, sometimes a little better if you have a great bullpen, but great teams blow people out. And that as we think about where we want to be eventually, that is a big focus, that you've got to be able to score runs in bunches. And we were not able to do that this year.
Hey, Jed. I believe it was towards the end of the season you talked about, you know, potential for in-house extensions, and I was trying to see, have you guys broached those conversations with guys like Happ and Horner, and if not, what's the timeline for that, or what's the urgency level as far as the offseason calendar?
Yeah, I'd say that we've taken the first steps. As you guys know, we're not going to talk about it once we do, but you know, certainly there are players that we'd love to keep in a Cub uniform for a long time, and hopefully we can work hard on those and get some across the finish line.
Yeah, I think Mike alluded to it earlier, the shortstop class that's out there with the shift going away, and to take nothing away of what Nico did this year. Do you need to get more athletic across the middle infield, and will you be involved in that market in general, those big guys out there?
I mean, we have total confidence in Nico's ability to play shortstop. I think he proved that this year, but you're right. Like, the game is about to trend more athletic. You know, getting rid of the shift will force that. Some of the base running rules will force that. So, yeah, I think that will certainly be a focus for us, and probably for 29 other teams as well, as they think about their offseason. But as far as the ability to play shortstop, I thought Nico did a terrific job this year, and I don't see any reason why he won't continue to get better as he gains experience and continues to work hard with Andy Green. I think he'll only get better there, but you're right. Like, yes, the way the game is trending, athleticism in the middle infield will make a big difference.
Do you expect to be in the deep end of that market with those
I wouldn't.
four-ish guys?
I wouldn't comment on that now. No.
Jed, with guys like Nico, Chris Morel, Patrick Wisdom, their ability to move around to different spots, how will that help you in the free agent market? And then how confident are you that the base layer of depth is at a point where, when you add to it, if there are injuries, you know, you won't take a big step back like you did in the first half?
Yeah. Yeah, I look at our pitching staff in a similar way as well. I think we have a lot of guys that they can start, they can be multi-inning relievers. I think that versatility is really helpful in pitching, and I think we have that offensively as well. Yeah, I mean, you alluded to it, that, you know, I think you so oftentimes, you know, you focus in the offseason on writing out your lineup card, you know, and this is what we are, and this looks really good, and then you realize that takes effect like 5 games a year, you know, and the rest of the time you've got injuries, or you've got, you know, different things happening where, you know, the entirety of your 40-man roster, the entirety of your organization is exceptionally important, and there were periods this year that we weren't prepared for that. We weren't ready for that. We had too many injuries. We didn't have the depth to handle it, and that is going to be a significant focus. I feel like as our minor league system churns out players, I think we are getting deeper. I think we saw that in the second half. So I think that we've made real progress in that regard. But I mean, depth has to be a constant focus. It's not something people talk about a lot in the winter. They focus on more high-profile things, but oftentimes it's the deepest teams that don't go through those long ruts. And we've had a couple of those the last couple of years where we just couldn't get out of a long rut, and a big part of that was the lack of depth. So we have to focus on that a lot.
Jed, you know, there was a lot of conversation last year how money wasn't the issue for you guys because you had the money to spend, but to be smart about how you spent your money and when you spent your money. So the questions we get a lot out there now is, how close are you to 2014 Chicago Cubs, and how important is it to identify not a great all-star shortstop or middle infielder, but the right one?
Yeah. There was a lot of talk about that in the second half. Like, where is this compared to 2014? And I will say that I think it's hard to compare those two things because when you look back to where our best prospects were in 2014, a lot of those guys were in the major leagues at the end of that previous season, and then a lot of those guys had either dominated in Double A or already in Triple A. So I do feel like at that point we were further along in terms of when those hitters were gonna be in the big league. So I don't think it's entirely fair to compare this to that. That said, I think from a pitching standpoint, I think we are probably further along now than we were at that time. So I don't think it's fair to compare that. I will say that when we went out into the free agent market prior to 2015, it was really only for one significant player, which is John Lester, a guy that we knew his makeup, we knew the toughness and the competitiveness and the maturity that he would bring. Other than that, we made small trades, for Miguel Montero. We made a trade for Dex. Those are really the key transactions prior to 15. There was only. What's that?
There was a free agent catcher.
Oh, that was a package deal. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think our focus was, the Lester deal got headlines, and we did that in large part because we knew him so well. But I think that the Montero and the Fowler trades had a massive impact, and those were things that weren't really talked about much at the time.
Jed, what was your message to Nico in exit meetings in terms of the possibility of that there could be a new shortstop next year or different options you could be looking at? How did you communicate that to him?
Yeah, I mean, we had a great conversation with Nico. Obviously, you guys know him really well. Hard to imagine a young player more focused on the team than Nico. He actually gets mad when you talk about him, which is pretty amazing. He wants to talk about the Cubs. He wants to talk about winning. He wants to talk about the culture. So it was pretty easy with him. As long as you're talking about winning and what can make us great, Nico's totally on board. So yeah, he's an incredible teammate, and I'm glad he's a Cub.
When Tom says things like the ball's in Jed's court, if he sees the right player at the right time out there, I give him our full support from ownership. I guess, how does that make you feel heading into this off season? Is that like more exciting possibility than maybe what you've had to do since you took over this job?
I mean, I think it's a great feeling. I think that it's what someone in my position wants. That you want the autonomy to make what you feel are the right decisions, the best decisions. I mean, we work so hard to research and think about how players fit, and when we have a moment that we feel like this is the right fit at the right time, we're going to present a lot of documentation about why we think that's the case. We don't work and we don't do many things off the cuff. We're going to be well researched, and we are going to think heavily about anything that we're going to do, especially given the size of the transactions I think you're alluding to. But I know that if I present Tom with a plan to do something like that, I know I have his support, and he's really, really good about pushing Carter and pushing me to for answers in terms of asking the right questions, making sure that we're thinking about things the right way. But I have total confidence that if we get to a place where we ask for a significant amount of money or to sign one player or several players, I have no doubt that we'll have his blessing, and I have no doubt the resources will be there.
Hey, Jed. With Ian, obviously he took a big step forward this year in terms of the player he is. And and trade deadline, contract extensions, or whatever. I know that's kind of something you're not looking to get into right now, but the way he's played this year, obviously the leader he's becoming, is that how important was that this season in terms of like where he might fit in long term on the Chicago Cubs?
Yeah, actually, one of the most gratifying things for me in this job is watching that arc of a player, watching that development, and he took a really remarkable step forward in terms of his consistency on the field. I think his career had been marked prior to this year by really high highs and really low lows, and he made a very concerted effort with his swing and his mentality to even that out, and I think he did a fantastic job, and I think that there's no reason that he can't continue to do that. But then also off the field, I think part of it was the fact that we had the trades last year. He stayed here and he took a real leadership role. I think he saw that those veterans that had been part of the 16 team were gone, and he stepped into that void, and his voice was fantastic. It was all about winning. It was all about developing guys. He and Nico have a really great relationship that way. Immediately, he took Seiya sort of under his wing and tried to mentor him and in the way the way baseball is played and the way things are done over here. So I thought he really found his voice from a leadership standpoint, and it was really, really gratifying to see that. So, like I said, I'm excited he's a Cub. Really, really good year. I thought he did a great job of finishing the race. And I thought, there was times in September when, Seiya was gone for a bit. Nico got hurt. Wilson was hurt. Madrigal was hurt. And, Ian never missed a beat that entire time. And it was really impressive to watch. And I thought he had a heck of a year.
You mentioned a little bit about Seiya and just the adjustments this season. I know you knew that there was going to be, that adjustment period and getting used to playing baseball here. How do you think he handled that, and what is kind of maybe the hope for next year where he will be more comfortable with just life here and the schedule and playing Major League Baseball?
Yeah. It's one of those things you talk a lot about the transition in the theoretical, and I've been a part of a handful of players coming over here, usually pitchers. That was the first time in my experience watching a guy go through it every day, and it's a real transition from the things you imagine, like facing major league pitching every day, to things like travel and time zones and not having every Monday off and things like that. I think that it was a real grind for him physically. I think he learned a lot about how to take care of his body over here and things he would change for next year. And we probably met with him for 45 minutes the other night about these topics. How do you prepare this off season for the grind that you're going to go through? How do you handle it differently during the season? There's just so many aspects of a player's life when he's used to playing in Japan and then coming over here. I mean, just some things as simple as speaking the language. So I thought he did a great job grinding through it. And unfortunately, he lost that chunk in the middle of the season with the finger injury. But I thought he did a really, really good job. I thought given the injury and the transition, I thought his numbers ended up in a solid place. And I think there's real room for growth going forward as he makes that transition, gets used to the pitching, and really is able to kind of change his habits and things to better fit our game versus the game in Japan.
Two things real quick. Did anybody need any surgeries or procedures done after the season?
No.
No. Okay. And then, you touched a little bit on the starting pitching depth that emerged over the course of the season. With that in mind, how important do you think it is to add a top-of-the-rotation starter?
I think it's important that we continue to add quality innings, I guess I would say. I think, putting the pressure on, how we define top of the rotation. I think we're actively looking for, quality innings, pitchers we feel like we can work with and potentially make better. So we're far from done when it comes to building the pitching staff, especially in the bullpen. We know we have holes to fill, but I feel good about the number of arms we have, and I think some of those guys will continue to take a step forward.
All right. Next spring, they have a World Baseball Classic. Is you guys okay to say you're playing WBC if he wants to?
Yeah, I mean, it's always an honor to represent your country, and I know he's got a gold medal already, and I know that's important to him. So we've had a lot of conversations about it. We're totally open to him playing in it. I think obviously he's trying to balance having a normal spring versus the WBC, and I know that's a consideration for him and probably a lot of the players that are thinking about it. But of course we're supportive of it. And I will say, as I think back to my answer about Seiya, throughout all that, he also had a really short spring, and a lot of guys did. I think sometimes, 2 weeks ago seems like a long time ago, let alone spring training. But we forget like how that truncated spring I think had a real impact on a lot of guys' preparation. Probably none more than a player coming from Japan who had to really get ready quickly. And I think I know he's excited to get over here, over to Arizona to start the process of preparing for the season and to have a normal spring.
I was curious how you evaluate the job David Ross has done, both the positives and areas for improvement, and what kind of the expectations for when you have a on paper winning team.
I mean, so I'd say, first of all, I love working with David. He's a great partner for Carter and for me. I really enjoy our interactions on a daily basis. All he cares about is like, how can we get better every day? How can we build this to be special? He always talks about I know what winning looks like through the lens of a player. You won the World Series in 13. He won the World Series in 16. He was part of some really good Atlanta teams. That is his entire focus. So he's great to work with on a daily basis. I haven't been around many people in my life that are as good as he is creating a culture, not just a fun culture, which I think he does, but also a culture of accountability. He builds real relationships with our players. But then when he needs to hold them accountable, he does, and they know it's for the right reasons, and that's an incredible attribute. So I thought the job he did in the second half was really special. To have me trade away 4 relievers at the deadline and have him get the guys to play hard night in, night out and be 8 games over 500. That's a heck of a managing job. So I thought he did a terrific job this year. As far as areas of development, I just think every year I think he'll get better and better of knowing the length of the season. His first season was a strange season with COVID. So this is really his second full season. He hasn't had a normal spring yet. So I think he'll just continue to get more and more comfortable with that. And then from a game management standpoint. Like anything, you're just going to get better and better with the more reps you have. He's got an awesome partner in Andy Green. They have a great relationship. They're constantly talking about the best way to maximize our roster, and so I think that just takes years and years, and he'll continue to get better and better. But David, couldn't be happier to have David, and I enjoy our interactions every day, and I'm glad he's our manager.
Jed, I know that we're not very deep into the playoffs, but what's been your initial impression of the new format, and how do you see it affecting team building?
That's a great question. It's early, so we'll see if my answer is right or not. But my first reaction when I saw the playoff format was I felt like the impact of a bye was going to be really extreme, and we'll find out now if that's the case. But I do think that fatigue is going to be a factor, whether it's going to be in the next round or the round after that if a team happens to advance. But in order to win those series, you've got to tax your bullpen, tax your starters. The travel is going to be real, and so again, we'll see if I'm right or not. But my first reaction when I saw it was like, oh, getting a bye is a massive advantage, and I probably stand behind that still.
Is there a scenario where Matt Mervis could play his way into the opening day plans, maybe lesser Brennan Davis, Canario, and then how do you just sort of balance close to major league ready guys versus attacking needs in the offseason?
Yeah. Without answering your question directly, I thought Matt had one of the best minor league seasons I've been around. Certainly the best minor league season I've been around of someone that I would say went into the season, it was unexpected. For a guy that struggled last year in Myrtle in his first pro season to start in South Bend and dominate at 3 levels and really actually almost improve his underlying numbers at each level is not something I've been a part of. And then hopefully he'll continue that this fall. But really, really special season. And I will give a lot of credit to our scouting department. That was quite a process. We had the day that you could sign the undrafted free agents in 2020. He was the number 1 guy on our list. He was the priority guy to sign, and we put a huge full court press on him. 4 seconds into the process, and we're able to land him, and I'm thrilled that we were. So, give him a ton of credit for bouncing back after a not a great 2021 season and having an awesome season and putting himself on the map and being asked about in question in forums like this. So really impressive. Brennan, excited he's playing. Started off well in the fall league. I know he's probably not as strong as he usually is because he wasn't able to fully get back to that after the back surgery. But I have no doubt he'll work hard in the fall league, and then hopefully once the fall league's over, he'll be able to get back to his normal strength and excited to have him this spring. But I think he's shown real resilience so far, and I have no doubt he'll get back to that this coming spring. But he did lose a fair amount of reps this year.
Jed, a lot of your players talked about the David Robertsons and the Chris Martins coming in and bringing in a winning attitude and also a calming effect as far as day-to-day. How essential is that to continue that process and help your players build on that? And then I have a follow-up question on the catching, if I can.
Yeah, I think you always want to have some stabilizers in the bullpen for sure. I'd love to think that we can get to a point as an organization where we can, almost entirely build our bullpen internally. We're not there yet, and we're not going to be there next year, so that will be a focus. I thought David and Chris did a terrific job of coming in here, and they did really help the bullpen. I would also give a lot of credit to Chris Young of working with those young guys and helping them. And when we made those trades at the deadline, I'd be lying to say I wasn't concerned about how our bullpen would perform the rest of the way. And the way they pitched, the way different guys came up from the minor leagues and stepped up and pitched in high leverage situations was really impressive. And I certainly hope those guys gain confidence from that those guys were forced into big situations at a really young age, and hopefully they can build on that going forward.
Assuming that Wilson hits free agency and likely goes elsewhere, how do you look at your catching, knowing Amaya, probably pretty well along, but didn't catch a lot this year, and your look at Gomes and how well he did handling the staff this year?
Yeah, well, as far as the Wilson goes, we'll obviously make him a qualifying offer, and we'll continue that dialogue. We've talked to Wilson, we've talked to his representatives, so I don't want to make any assumptions there. As far as Jan goes, he was a terrific addition to our pitching staff. Is how I look at it. He really worked with those guys every day. every one of the pitchers feels like he's completely invested in what they're trying to do, and that was really impressive from a makeup and character standpoint. And PJ is the same way. Amaya, it's been just kind of one injury after another. I feel terrible for him. He had the Tommy John, and then obviously he's had the Liz Frank injury. So he's gonna had surgery, and now he has to come back from that as well. So he's a really good prospect, really talented, and a great kid. He just hasn't been able to get over the hump from an injury standpoint, and certainly the injury that costing him the rest of this season. He'll have to kind of make up those at bats next year. He's still a really good prospect. I think he's going to be a really good player, but he just hasn't been able to get on the field.
Jed, how is Kyle Hendricks doing, and how much does his status and even his season at large kind of impact how you guys view the need for pitching and to go out and get some this winter?
Yeah. I know he's feeling good. He hasn't started, actively throwing, at this point. He's going to try to have a normal off season. I know talking to him, he has, extensive goals this off season about not only trying to get back to where he was, but also to continue to to try to get better. But yes, I think as we view it, I mean, he didn't pitch at the end of the season. I have all the confidence in the world that he'll do everything he can to be the pitcher he has been for us, since 2014. But obviously there is a level of uncertainty with anyone that misses the second half of the season.
Jed, we've talked a little bit about the rule changes for next year, but in specific with maybe like bigger bases and stuff, how do you see base running coming into play more, and how would you evaluate how your team did this year base running? I know you guys pushed the envelope a little bit more, but how do you evaluate that fit maybe moving forward as well?
So yeah, I think as we talked about with infield defense, I expect that stolen bases, given the pitch clock and the step off rules and the bigger bases, I think that will become more of a focus. How do I evaluate our base running? It's not good enough. We make too many mistakes. We give out too many outs on the bases. There were times I think we pushed the envelope intentionally hard because we don't have the ability to hit a lot of homers, and so we tried to create some runs, manufacture some runs. I think that part of it was understandable. But there was times I felt like we could be a little bit sloppy on the bases, and that's the stuff that winning teams don't do, and we have to cut that part of it out. So I think base running is an area that we can improve significantly.
Jed, in watching the playoffs, have you replayed any of your conversations from the trade deadline and wondered why a team didn't step forward to get Wilson?
I mean, everyone has to sort of run their own railroad. Everyone has to make their own decisions. I will say that, one that I look forward to watching is, I feel like the deal we made with the Yankees was sort of a good old fashioned baseball trade. And we traded 5 years for a really good reliever there that they wanted a, right-hand reliever. They felt like it, could get outs against their opponents, who oftentimes were very right-handed. And they knew Scott had great makeup, and he was pitching incredibly well for us. And we were able to acquire a young pitcher that could provide more innings, be a starting pitcher for us. And I don't know, that deal for me was gratifying on both sides, because it was just sort of a baseball trade. It wasn't entirely future for present, as so many of these deadlines are. It's hard that when when you're a team and you're in the race and you're trading sometimes 7 years of control of a young player for 2 months. I think those deals mentally can be really hard. I think in the case of the Yankee deal, it was it's just trading different assets, a reliever for a starter, but it felt like more of a baseball trade than a deadline deal.
I know you said don't assume anything with Wilson, but when he's kind of waving goodbye to the crowd and telling us I want to be somewhere I'm wanted, can you explain from your chair where that relationship is at, and I guess your approach to him going forward?
Yeah, I mean, we had a great conversation with Wilson the other day. We've always had a really good relationship, and I just admire how he competes, and I admire the passion like I said, we'll definitely make him a qualifying offer. We'll be in touch with his representatives, and as far as his comments and things like that, I'll take the comments that he sort of makes to me directly, not those. And like I said, I've really enjoyed, I've always enjoyed our relationship, and I've really enjoyed watching him grow from I remember watching him play in Boise in 2012, and I think whenever he's been with the Cubs for a long time, and I'll sort of take those comments and what we've talked about.
You talk about the depth and adding the right pieces to fit in what you're trying to do, but when you look at a lot of the teams that are still playing now, Yankees with Judge and Stanton, Phillies with Harper, Padres with Machado and Soto, those teams, they have the star power. So where does adding the star power, where does that sit on the priority list?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's a question that comes down to timing. You want to make sure that you add those players at the right time for the organization, and that's something we have to make those decisions. But there's no question that those caliber players, can certainly swing a playoff series or make the difference in a couple games to make the playoffs or not make the playoffs. But you have to make sure you sign those players at the right time.
I just had a follow up on the base running stuff. How much do you think, sloppiness that you alluded to is inexperience of some guys and trying to make something happen versus coaching?
Some of it. I mean, I think, I do think that when you struggle to score, sometimes you try to push the envelope. From a coaching staff standpoint, it's something we talked about a lot. You have to address those things with each player and talk through the times we made obvious mistakes. So I don't blame coaching, but it's certainly something that is going to be a real focus of our meetings this winter, and it's going to be a real focus of how we go about things in spring training, and it's going to be a real focus next year. That there's a difference between being aggressive and giving up outs, and sometimes we gave up outs.
And then now that you've had a season sample size of PitchCom, just what's been your impression of it, and is there any adjustments to it going forward you'd like to see?
Well, I've noticed in the playoffs at times it's probably not loud enough, and I look forward to having that problem, when we're in the playoffs here. But yeah, I think it's a great advancement. The more we can get away from these games just getting stalled out by the constant paranoia of sign stealing, I think that's a lot of it. There's the sign stealing, and then there's the paranoia and the attempt to disguise it, and that can really slow the game down. So I think a combination of the pitch clock and PitchCom will be terrific. I mean, I went to a fair number of minor league games this year, and it's really enjoyable. Just the pace. There's a constant pace to the game. PitchCom is part of that, and I think the pitch clock will be part of that as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm sure you guys are too.
Speaking of fast pace, Wade Miley, he didn't pitch much this year, but we saw the impact he made behind the scenes. Smiley, when he was on the mound, was effective. Both guys have expressed an interest in, returning. I know Smiley has the option. How did you view both of those guys, and what was your message to them in terms of potential for next year?
I think taking them in order, first of all, every day Wade Miley pitches is a great day for all of us, it was unfortunate for him. When he did pitch, he pitched pretty well, but he obviously didn't pitch often enough. And so many guys, especially guys new to a team, would have just, probably left. They probably would have found themselves home or in Arizona, rehabbing elsewhere, having no impact on the team. And just the way he is as a person, I think he felt like I have to try to earn my money somehow. And the impact he had on our young guys and our culture was awesome. He's just a really fun guy to have around every day, but also really intentional about team building, really intentional about working with the young guys on how they can get better. So I wish I had seen him pitch more, for sure. I think he wishes he pitched more, but I couldn't leave the year with a higher impression of a person as far as just his desire to impact us. And then with Drew, he went through that stretch right, coming out of the All-Star break, really up until the last couple weeks of the season. I mean, he was outstanding for that. I guess it was probably a 10 or 12 start stretch, and clearly. I think he wishes he could have thrown more innings throughout the whole season. But the time he really got things going, he was really good. And I think with both guys, in the right setup, I think we'd love to have them back. I think they both have a really positive impact on the organization. And as I said before, there's no finish line when it comes to adding guys that can make starts in the big leagues and that can add to your culture.
Update on Ed Howard?
Yeah, we got some video of him the other day. He's starting to move around well. He looks good. Actually, Carter and I were just talking today. Now that things are over and slowed down, trying to go visit him. And he obviously we knew when he had the injury, it was a long road, but he's worked like crazy to come back. And we're excited to see him on the field soon and hope see him in spring training. But sounds like he's doing well.
Do you think is adding a closer on your wish list, or do you feel like there's somebody in house that can handle that?
Kind of going back to Bruce's question earlier, with the way our bullpen is set up, obviously there's a long-term goal of getting to a place where we're just able to build the bullpens internally. We're not there yet. So yeah, I think there will certainly be a focus on bringing in a veteran presence, whether that's closing or not. It is important it will be important to us to bring in some external options from the bullpen standpoint, and that's something we've had some success doing, and we'll work hard to replicate that. I'll say thank you guys for everything. Appreciate it. All right, see you.